Thanks for watching live or listening back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday lunch show with myself, Michae Wright. We are normally joined by my amazing co-host, Jen Hurst, but she's still unavailable for these sessions. So it's just going to be me hosting our very esteemed, and I'm really, really excited to have David Mastrocola on the show. David, how are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. We've just finished our school show last night of Mary Poppins. So we did 4 shows over 3 days. So I think myself and the team are quite tired today, but it went really well. It was really lovely.
That's the thing. Oh, well, you know what? Fair play to you. That's the thing. Anyone watching who runs a similar format where you run productions and shows, you will know exactly how time consuming, how energy consuming they are, you know, pretty much from the summer holidays for the planning right up until the final show. But David, I'm sure it was an amazing success, and you know, well done and fair play for putting on these school productions. Are, like I said, they're tough. They're not for the faint-hearted, and there's a lot of organization involved in that one. So by any means, if you want to run off and get a coffee or a Red Bull, just in case you find yourself finding a little bit tired, and then that'll be fine. David, thank you so much for joining us today. I brought David on today's show to discuss something which I think is really important from my area of expertise, and of course, David is absolutely knowledgeable and kind of expert level when it comes to this vocational education and industry. And what we want to try to do for today's chat is really talk about vocational education in detail, its relevancy, what it is, how it functions within the school, and then more importantly, how vocational education can then feed into industry. David and I are both from performing arts background, but David also wears hats in relation to sports and media. Is that correct? Right,
yeah, dance, drama, and art as well.
That's right. So there's many things that David knows and can cover in terms of his role. So in terms of the vocational education and the industry experience, we really want to try to deliver as broad a topic as we possibly can in terms of what we discuss. In addition to that one, we'd like to discuss why vocational education really matters to industry and its relevance to creating that feeder line, if you will, to jobs or even for higher education. We'll talk about the transitional routes as well, from education into vocational routes, how David integrates the more specifically to music, but also could be any other curriculum under his auspices. We can talk about how that all ties in with his role and how the school really builds vocational studies into the curriculum. And if we've got an opportunity as well, which I think is still a hot topic in terms of many industries, is AI, the impact of AI, how vocational education uses AI and what we really need to be aware of in terms of the pitfalls, because, you know, as we all are aware, AI is definitely becoming ubiquitous in terms of what we do in our lives, not least our education. So I think having an awareness and responsibility, but also as well teaching the right ways of using it, the ethical ways of using AI. So lots to cover, and hopefully we will do that. Before we begin, though, just a word from our sponsors. First of all, I'd start with Hatchet Learning. This show and other TTR shows is brought to you in partnership with Hatchet Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development and visit www.hatchetlearning.com to explore full range of titles. And in addition to that, the Teachers Talk Connect, the Connect extravaganza, I think it's called, a networking extravaganza, is back Sunday, the 14th of March in Manchester. It's a Teachers Talk radio show. So please come along. Tickets are free. So if you want to come along and meet some of the TTR hosts, or even chat anything to do with how you could be involved with TTR, or you just want to come say hello, and then please come over there Saturday the 14th of March in Manchester. If you want to book your free tickets, head over to ttrradio.org/connect 2026. Okay, right, let's get to it, David, then. So why does vocational education matter to industry?
I think with vocational courses, they teach students the actual skills that they're going to need to be able to, and this sounds really crude, to how to have a career, how to have a portfolio career if you're looking at performing arts, because the world has changed since the 1990s or before, where students or where people could be just a musician, a performing musician, and be able to make a good living from that. With vocational courses, we can teach those students and give students those opportunities to learn the skills of a portfolio lifestyle. So, understanding copyright, so they'll be able to make money through copyright and publishing their music, being able to know how to run lighting desks, know how to event manage, know how to do live sound, how to record, how to produce, and how to promote themselves as well. And that goes across sort of all the performing arts, all the creative arts. We encourage, certainly in my school, I encourage students to have, their own Instagram page for their music. They have their personal one, but then they have one where they can show what they can do to the outside world. So, our concerts are recorded, videoed, and also multi-track recorded. So then students can mix those songs and then they can post them. So they have good quality recordings and good quality footage that they can then use to promote themselves. So vocational just allows you that additional space to be able to give them those skills, as opposed to just teaching to an exam or to a very rigid structure, which has its place in education, obviously.
Of course. That's great. So in terms of music, do you offer a similar provision for, other industry? So in terms of covering other industry needs, in addition to music, do you offer the same like you would for arts, that you would for the sports provision? Is there that sense of student can take said product, promote themselves on social media, take what you produce for school and use them for their own means?
I think it's something that I'm looking into at the moment. It's sort of slightly music centric, because that's sort of where I've started with the promotion side of things. But I know that students do have their own art pages as well. And the school that I work at has its own performing arts Instagram page and visual arts page and sport page. So the work is constantly being sort of promoted, and then we're trying to encourage students in the other creative arts to be able to do the same thing.
So it feels very much in terms of your school, it's the template is there for vocational learning in terms of industry needs and demands. You just simply put said template into X subject, and then they use that. But the idea there is that once you leave the walls of education, if you will, the four walls of education, you have enough of a foundation to build a career upon, and that foundation is learnt and built in schools, so that you're not starting right from the beginning. When you leave, you've already built up enough, or students have built up enough, in order for them to then go on with their careers and develop, whether it be through industry practice or go to university.
Yeah, and it helps also with the university, with applying for university and applying for work experience. They've got a portfolio already of what they can do, and they can simply show that portfolio to the university or the employer, or if they're going out into the real world, essentially. It's something that we've only really just started, and it takes a bit of work because when I started my own page, it was very much, it does not come easy to promote myself online. I feel I'm a bass player by trade, so I very much am quite happy to stand at the back and not be seen. But I sort of have to force myself to do this to get to have a more of a portfolio life as well, to be playing more outside rather than just teaching, and trying to give students that confidence that they can do the same thing, because it is, to put yourself out there is actually, when you're 15, 16, 17, it's quite something to be able to post videos of yourself. And the performing arts is it's a very personal thing, and the internet can be quite a cruel place. So to put yourself into a position where you're opening yourself up to that is quite a big thing for them as well, I think.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, it's very, very competitive. How does your school validate the vocational offering? Is it through employ boards? Is it if you have any placements? Is it from the feedback of there? Is there any kind of attainment data that you look at? I mean, how do you validate your offering?
I think so the school that I work in, the SLT and the governors support the vocational courses sort of through and through, and they understand the massive benefits that the vocational courses give to the students, offering those skills to students, and students can see, the younger students can see what the older students are doing as they progress through Key Stage 4 and into Key Stage 5, and it's giving them the real life experiences they need to be able to progress. Currently the music department is actually running a GCSE music, but we've only done that a couple of years, and we're still very much doing everything vocationally. We still have to teach the exam, but it is still, in my eyes, a vocational course insofar that with performances and composition, we are teaching it in a vocational way, as opposed to. Yeah,
sorry, I was going to ask you, how do you kind of merge the vocational academic side, but you've just kind of mentioned it there. You still deliver a GCSE music like you would akin to a vocational. The only difference is that instead of producing coursework or portfolio at the end of the course with GCSE, of course, you have your 2 bits of coursework and then you've got the exam. But your school's kind of the way it delivers it is almost like, well, this is GCSE, but we could still deliver it like a vocational program.
Absolutely.
And imagine, would this be probably the same as other subjects that you have in the school, that you deliver, say, academic, well, I don't like to use the word academic, but non-vocational programs? Would you deliver them in the same way, or would there be a bit more of a separation between those ones?
I don't think so. I think it's all the subjects who are so dance and drama are vocational courses at our school, as is sport, and then art is GCSE. But we treat them all the same way in the fact that they are all extremely viable courses that give students those skills. So there's no barrier, certainly in the area that I work in, arts and wellbeing, that I lead. There is no differentiation between GCSE or vocational. It is about giving students opportunities, and that is the entire ethos of the department and the school, from the sort of the top down, is giving students opportunities that they wouldn't normally get, so they have the skills to enter the workplace or for higher education.
Okay, well, that's fascinating. It's the first, and I mean this in a very positive light, it's the very first school I've heard of where they kind of blur the lines between the vocational and non-vocational, but they deliver the courses not as a split. Because I would imagine, well, as you know, when it comes to delivering programs, there's a methodology of delivering them, and I'd imagine be very confusing for students to go from art or dance and then go to something which is non-vocational based, but then completely switch a method of learning. Because, if you're basically spending half a day in a vocational subject and you spend the other half in a non-vocational subject, I can imagine it'd be very difficult for students to kind of flick that switch. And also, and I'll say this from my experience as well, as a student and also as a teacher as well, I think that in terms of vocational learning, it certainly suits a type of learner. You know what I mean? It certainly suits somebody who is hands-on, somebody who wants to learn by doing. So I'd imagine that kind of approach that your school has is brilliant, but it also means that you don't have the potential issues of, say, a subject which isn't non-vocational to go, oh, well, I've got them for an afternoon, and it's been really difficult because students are still trying to, click into gear. Would that be a fair assessment? Or
Yeah, I think so. I think what frustrates me about vocational subjects or people's thoughts about vocation is they lack the rigor that a GCSE would, and that absolutely doesn't. It's just a different way of learning. It's a different way of teaching. It's a different way of, the students who go the vocational route have the experience. And I'll use an example. I had a student who's graduated now, and they went to a university to study a vocational course in music and music business. And in their first year, they were looking at copyright, and the lecturer sort of said, "Oh, you already know all of this because we taught them about copyright and publishing." And this student ended up giving some of the lectures to the other students on it as she was getting to a second and third year, because she already had all that knowledge that maybe a GCSE doesn't give them that knowledge. So she was already sort of well ahead of the curve. So she was already learning more and more, and now she's running her own rehearsal studios, sort of in the west of England, and carving out her own career as a performer and session musician.
Wow!
But that's where the vocation. It's not that they lack rigor; it's just different, and it gives students opportunities and skills that you're not going to get. And I know I'm certainly not sort of poo-pooing GCSEs in any way, because they absolutely have their place. But learning about Bach's pedinnery in really sort of close detail is a really useful skill to have. But understanding how to wire up a mixing desk using a Cat6 cable into a stage box is also an extremely important piece of skill that students need to understand. And they need to know how to run a mixing desk and how to run a tablet and understand what click tracks are. I mean, these are all things that's real world skills that they need to understand.
Interesting. You're right. And it's, you're absolutely spot on with everything you say, David. And it reminds me of anyone who's looking to work as a portfolio career. They would need to have as much as a developed skill set as possible. So there is the academic knowledge, but what good is the academic knowledge? Like you said, if you've been offered the job and you can't wire a mixing desk, or you don't know how to patch in this, or you don't, or you've never worked with click tracks. For those listening, click track is when musicians perform. Sorry, I don't mean to sound I'm patronizing people when I say this, but basically a metronome in your ear that keeps time, and all the musicians in the band listen to it, and sometimes they mark out sections of the song. So if there are any musicians who don't know how to work with a click track and with this constant noise in your ear, it could be really, really annoying and just a bit weird. So you're quite right. Having all of that, I think is vitally important. So thank you so much for that. Just want to kind of take a sidestep and talk to you about your role actually as Director of Art and Wellbeing, and talk about potential kind of like cross art impact. So you obviously mentioned Mary Poppins as a show, so that would be a brilliant example of a cross arts impact of merging different faculties within performing arts. But if I want to start with, so in terms of your role, how do you support all of the subjects that are under your umbrella?
I think we talk about all these opportunities, like we're a results-based industry. So I support my teams in making sure that they have the skills and they have the time to make sure that they can get results for the students. And then from that, I can then help them facilitate the opportunities for students across sort of all the subject areas. I'm not getting involved in the nitty-gritty of all the subjects. We have subject leads who are more than capable and very well skilled at doing that, but sort of overseeing it and making sure that we're maximizing the opportunities potential for our students. So that's sort of my role as a Director of Arts and Wellbeing. And just I also sort of try and find additional opportunities for the students and for the subjects to sort of get involved in. You talk about cross-curricular, I've had a media student taking photographs for us. He does it for all the shows. and I might come back to that because he said an interesting thing. He said something interesting about 6 months ago after taking photos at one of our events, where he had no idea that these events were happening in the school. And he's a great kid in year 10, does all the right things, but he didn't know all these evening performances happening, which sort of changed my mindset to having daytime performances as well at school. But with cross-curricular, we had art students helping with designing the set and building bits and pieces of the set, painting the floor. So trying to get as many students from different areas sort of involved. Slightly harder with sport to get them into the creative arts bit, but with the art students and the media students sort of helping out with the design of the set and getting involved that way. And then they ended up becoming part of the tech team that moved all the staging around, sort of by default, because they were around.
Yeah, it's one of those faculties, performing arts, and if you can count media in there, it's one of the ones that you can do a lot of that collaboration. So you've got the student taking photographs of recitals and events, but also I'm sure they've also been asked, they might do some promo, or they might be in sports day or something to say, right, keep taking.
So we've had photographers taking sports day photographs and bits and pieces, and if we have a reindeer charity run at Christmas, and there were students out there from the media taking photographs and bits and pieces. And in the past, media students where they've done media and music have made music videos as part of the vocational element of it, which is brilliant. We made a zombie movie, a zombie music video, and we have an outdoor ed site with a lake at our school. We're really lucky that was being developed over sort of the past 10 years. And it also has an outdoor theatre where we can, so in the summer, we have an outdoor theatre that we've been building sort of the last 4 years. So we're getting local shrubbery growing around slowly to sort of enclose it.
Wow.
And again, outdoor ed students, our sports students, are involved in that and in planting all the shrubs and getting involved that way to make an outdoor theatre that could be used by just not just the school but the local community as well. So when I talk about it more, I'm realising that we are actually, there's a fair bit that the whole sort of faculty work together on, because the sports students use it as well for bushcraft and bits and pieces like that as well, because we have a little wooded area there. So it's a lovely space.
So it's a project which it's a great project that encapsulates so many students, and it's not just a set. It's everyone can muck in, and if there's a discipline or a subject which has use of it or connection, the school brings it in and say, right, this is part of your world, this is part of what you use. So there's almost like a bit of a constructivist approach, isn't it, where everyone builds their world and they construct their learning and their activities in there, which is why I love vocational learning, because I think that plays upon that far more than say an academic way of looking.
The way that it engages students who maybe haven't previously been as engaged. There was one student who was just totally took over the digging the holes for all the trees and sort of cutting them back, and he just knew exactly what he was doing, and suddenly he had all this knowledge that we didn't know he had, and he was then directing students around to make sure that everything was being done correctly. It was really lovely to see. It was really interesting and a real eye opener. I saw this student in a totally different light. And it was lovely. Just totally outdoorsy, and totally was just absolutely into creating this theatre space.
Wow. That's a great story, David. That's amazing. And it's and another success story of how vocational learning can engage some students back into the learning, and it's just finding that right one. That leads me on to, so your role as art director of arts and well-being. What does the well-being aspect look like in terms of your day-to-day, and how do you build that into what you do as an overseer, if you will, of all the vocational offerings?
Right, I think if we start with sport, the sport team are great. They work closely with the Youth Sports Trust, and they have something called GALS, which is something that a group that they started a number of years ago, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, which is where to re-engage girls in sport. We know there's a drop off of girls in sport when it comes to secondary school, particularly from year 9 onwards. And so this was a sort of almost like a focus group to begin with, to try and to try and re-engage these students in sport, and it won a national award, this group, and it's moved on so much there. And just the well-being, sport is so important, and PE and exercise, and our school is in an area where the health of the local the cohort and the families is well below average. I think it's the school is in quite a deprived area on the south coast, sort of a typical seaside sort of town. And so we need to teach and help these students make sure they have a healthy life, and they know how to live healthily. And I don't oversee the food department, but it's the food department sort of work as well with making sure the students know how to cook and how to eat healthily. And we run a health and fitness vocational course as well as sport, so students know how to lead a healthy lifestyle. And there was a report from the Cultural Learning Alliance. I think it was back in 2020, where it said with music, if students study an instrument, they report, like, I think it was 38% better health, 38% more likely to have good health, and it increases their attainment in English and maths, and 30% more likely to vote in local elections and everything like that. So it's sort of the whole area sort of is about not just well-being for health, but also their mindset, engaging in politics, engaging in increasing their attainment across English and maths. Fundamentally the two most important subjects that they need to learn to be able to get to move on to an apprenticeship, university, a job. You need those fours and fives in English and maths. And I make no bones about that. I know where other subjects sit in the hierarchy of a school. English and maths and science are the most important, that they need to have those to be able to progress. So that's with sort of the well-being side of things, and also the well-being, giving them confidence and resilience across the arts, getting them to perform, in recitals, in dance evenings, in drama shows. It's really important. We have our school sort of motto is Aspire, and with the well-being side and across the school, because it's embedded again from the top down. So we're trying to get that acronym of ambitious, self-confident, physically literate, independent, and emotionally literate. And that those are all the things that arts and well-being sort of try and get into all their subjects, all the opportunities, because that's what our students need to be able to progress in the world. And playing for a sports team, they're developing resilience all the time, as well as sort of being physically literate. Performing in front of in a small recital for the first time is really developing their resilience. We will have students who walk off stage because they've had a bit of a shocker, and it happens, and then there'll be a teacher there, or there'll be their friends who will encourage them, and they can come back on, they give it another crack, and that's just part of being the department, developing all of those things. And that's sort of what I oversee. And I very much use the phrase overseeing it because, it's a large department. I think there's about 26 members of the department, the faculty, and they are all doing loads to make sure that these students are developing all these key skills. And then across the school, it's sort of academically as well with all the other teachers. And we have a Born Scholars program where the students who are sort of gifted, I was academically gifted, it's sort of, you could call it a grammar stream. It's not called a grammar stream, but that's the sort of the idea behind it. It's about giving those students opportunities as well to develop those sort of Aspire qualities, and that's sort of embedded across the school for everyone. It's a lot of work has gone into it to make sure that students are getting those opportunities. I've rambled slightly there and gone off subject.
No, not at all. I mean, I was going to ask a question within that in terms of the measurement of it all, but I mean, you've already mentioned the impact and the success and the awards that have been given to the school. You've mentioned the awareness that SLT have, and I think the biggest impact from me in terms of how you measure it is just where it is in the school. You know, it's not an isolated. Well, your well-being provision for what you do isn't necessarily isolated to one thing. It's everywhere. So if an inspector was to go around, inspectors go around to view the school and take a temperature check, as they do, I'm pretty certain, even without the paperwork you produce, they're going to see everything that you've described, and it's right there in front of them. And all of the eyeball test is passed, and you know the projects with the theater and the nature around it, it's all there. So in terms of the how you measure it, you can proudly say, well, this is how we measure it. You know, go talk to the students, go look around, you know, talk to people, have a look at this. You don't need to read the documents. We've incorporated everything. We walk the walk and we talk the talk. So, I mean, that's an amazing model.
I think it even comes down to things like you walk down the main corridor and there are honour boards sort of around sort of the central part of the school, which shows destinations for all the students who've gone to university since the academy opened in 2010. So, and we've been running our sixth form, I think, from 2013, I think it is. And there's honour boards for all the students who've gone to university, and you know, with all the subjects that they've gone to study, and it's just such a wide variety of vocational, sort of more vocational degrees, but more traditional degrees. And again, students pass that every day as they're walking the corridors to their next lessons, and that again is giving them sort of, they can see all these students have been to university. It's not out of their reach. For a lot of the students, they'll be the first person to go to university. So that is so important to try and get that into the mindset where it's like, oh well, you can absolutely go to university to study. And to break that sort of, oh, university is not for me. No. My family, we've never been to university. It's so important that, you know, they know that opportunity is there. They might not go to university, they might not take up that offer, and they might go into work, and that's, again, absolutely fine. But they know that university is an option, where maybe in the past it might not have been seen as that. And I think the vocational subjects have played a huge part in developing that idea.
Yeah, and more importantly, because I guess I went to my route into university was through vocational. I went to a vocational college, so I got everything that I needed to go to university from there. So I think the fact that you're promoting that within the school is amazing. Before we move on to a really engaging conversation with you, David, I want to give a shout out again to our sponsors of today's show. The first sponsor is Hatchet Learning, and it's brought to you in partnership with Hatchet Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hatchetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, if you were with us, if you just joined us, hello, welcome to the show. We have our annual Teachers Talk Connect extravaganza. It's an annual CPD networking event hosted by and brought to you by Teachers Talk Radio. The majority of the TTR team will be there in Manchester, so that takes place on Saturday the 14th of March. Tickets are free, so if you're around the area and you got some time that you'd like to come pop along, then please do come along. You can get your free tickets at ttrradio.org/connect 2026. So, AI and vocational education. AI is obviously this big, scary, dark cloud which is kind of looming over us, certainly in us educators, in terms of what we offer and could we potentially offer it in the future. Lots has been said about it, not only in Teachers Talk Radio, but it's been very much part of the zeitgeist for a number of years in terms of how it impacts us now and how it will potentially impact us in the future. But I want to start with the positives that you, David, have experienced and seen through AI. Now, where has it been supporting your delivery in terms of what you do for your job and the vocational aspect of the school?
So, I mean, obviously, I'd say we obviously have an AI policy at our school that we follow for coursework, particularly with vocational subjects, obviously, really important. I think with the positive side of AI that I've used personally for teaching, I've used it. I've used it to help marking. There's some AI out there which doesn't grab everything from the internet. You have complete control over where it's garnering the information. And if you have enough moderated work at different grades, then you can import current students' work into it, and it will and it can sort of give it an overall mark and give it some feedback. Now, I do this pretty regularly. You have to check it, obviously, very carefully, and there was something we'll miss, but I found that's a huge time saver, a huge, particularly at sixth form level, just to give really good, solid feedback to students, because if I can find a way to try and save time so I can use my role to provide an additional opportunity or to think about another way of working and to another performance or another fixture or anything like that, then I will use it. And I found that has saved me a fair bit of time. And it is useful. Again, there's always that caveat of checking it through very carefully to make sure there's no errors in it or anything, and that you actually agree with what it's doing. But it's, so far I found it, I've been using it about the past 18 months, and it's pretty accurate. I think as a music teacher, I've used it to support students in Key Stage 4 and 5, where I've been using stem splitters. So I can place a piece of music into AI and it will split it up into, for those people who aren't musicians, split it up into a drum track, guitar track, vocals. So I can make bespoke vocal tracks, karaoke tracks, if you will. I can change. I've got a drummer who's learning a song, and I can increase the volume on the drums so they can hear the drum part, or I can isolate it completely, so they can learn the part. If the music isn't available, they can learn the part by ear. Again, another key thing that I try and do in music is teach them to play by ear as well as reading music, because you're not always. I learned by ear, because I would have loved the internet in the 90s. It would have saved me hours of listening to Dire Straits on a record player, trying to work out Sultans of Swing. It would have taken the hours I wasted, and now you can just download it. But it's really important they learn by ear. So that I use that an awful lot, and then I can create. And students are starting to do this. The sixth formers have sort of cottoned onto this idea, and they are now creating their own backing tracks, bespoke backing tracks, and adding in clicks themselves. And there's a particular bit of AI that can make a click track. It creates a click track for you, and it's surprisingly accurate. Yeah. Which I was really, when one of my students said he was going to do it, I was dubious, I would say, about how accurate the click was, and it was pretty much spot on. And I was like, oh, that's a nice bit of kit. That's going to be useful.
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, there's a lot of time saving that has gone in terms of what you do for that one. Have you ever used AI for, let's say, mock client briefs or contracts or anything that you can relate to kind of more industry specific, like you are likely to see this contract, you're likely to see this document, you are likely, have you used AI to create that, to give your students a chance, a sense of, well, when you work in the industry, like if you're working with media, here's a company profile, this is what they want, and this is how they want their brand to be represented. Have you done things like that at all?
So one of the things I've done in previous years, and I haven't yet to do it to my current year 12s who are studying a copyright unit and publishing, I create various different contracts, copyright contracts, some of which would rip them off badly, and some that are very nice, and I make them go through those contracts, and they have to work out if they're going to be ripped off or not from these publishers, because I think that is something I think parents are often worried about with going into the creative arts, is lack of money being paid, which is obviously we know isn't true. Music, or the creative arts alone, I think it's £8 billion, £8 billion it sort of annually makes the creative arts and performing arts, but they're also worried about their child being, and rightly so, being ripped off by the music industry. So teaching them how to see what a good deal is and what a poor deal is really important. So I've done that in the past. We obviously create bespoke questions for GCSE as well using AI. That's really useful using past mark schemes and stuff like that. I've done that, but more for the vocational side, creating event planning for them and showing them contracts for event planning and how giving them scenarios, different scenarios where they have to plan events in different areas or different venues and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So AI can give you a newer, different ideas and a different way of thinking for some of the for some different scenarios. It is a useful tool, but there's always that caveat. And
there is, and I was going to mention about how you handle bias, safety, accuracy. How do you handle? So if you're going to be, it sounds like you're promoting it and using it ethically and saying to your students, "Hey, look, it's there. There's no point in hiding it." How do you personally? Firstly, how do you oversee it, and how do you oversee it as part of your faculty, that you make sure that you're addressing biases, you're addressing in the safety concerns and the accuracy? How do you make sure that the use of the AI is what, as you say it is, and as it should be?
Yeah, I mean, I think music is probably using AI the most currently at the moment. You obviously have that concern about students using AI to create coursework, but then it is actually quite clear when students have used it, because their work doesn't sound anything like they normally would. So it's quite obvious. I think it's tricky with. There's a lot been in the news recently about AI music for compositions. Again, you can. It's quite obvious when students have done it. When they've been doing sort of on little projects of the composition, it's quite obvious that we know that you've used AI to create that bit or they're using loops or anything, because it doesn't sound like their previous work in any way, shape or form. It is a really, really, really tricky thing to sort of oversee and to try and clamp down on. I mean, we obviously speak to them about it, and there's a school policy for it. But there's so much being spoken about. I don't know how much more I can add to it, because it's very tricky, and I think there needs to be sort of possibly stricter guidelines on it for everything to do with AI. I think within education, and I have no answers for that at all.
No. And sorry, I wouldn't expect.
Oh no,
it's one of those ones where it's like you said, it's a wild west of. We've opened the floodgates now, and it's out. And how do you police it? Well, you probably should have started before you released the software, and that way you could have put, not least because you mentioned copyright, and I'd imagine in your teaching you would have easily gone. The same applies to me. When I learned about copyright, when I was, starting out, it was very easy. It was basically you could prove copyright if you have a physical form, physical manifestation of a product that you can easily prove that has been stolen from you, and you can say, right, you stole that from me. No, I didn't. Well, actually, on this date, I made this. On this date, you made this. Oh, okay. Obviously, with AI companies now farming and sourcing hundreds of thousands of musical data, using it as part of their AI model. There's some AI apps which you and I know of that auto-generate music. And I'll also put in there as well, seeing as obviously you oversee media, or they also generate images and illustrations, right? So I'd imagine your teaching of copyright would be, well, that was what I learned, but now AI copyright and the legal battles that have ensued with record companies and media companies, now we have a very, very ambiguous, how can we prove that copyright has been, how can we prove that said company is as in breach of copyright when one product that you might say is yours is part of a vast network? How do you teach it, and how do you kind of really let your students know that this is your landscape? If you're gonna go into this area, this is the landscape you're working in.
It's something I'm grappling with at the moment, because it's only really come to the fore properly in the last year, I would say, with AI music. where I think there's 250,000 pieces of music being released every day now that are being uploaded to one of the streaming sites, which is absolutely phenomenal and terrifying. And with much of it being AI, and it can be quite difficult to differentiate it from created music. Copyright has always been a grey area anyway, because a lot of it's to do with, if you're looking at there was a case between, and if any of my students are listening to this will laugh because I always use him as an example because I think he's amazing. Tom Petty and with Tom Petty and Sam Smith, and there's a grey area in a song. I went back down with "Stay With Me," I think it was, and there was there's a melody that sort of, you can hear it, and you think, oh, that's quite familiar, but then it's not the same. It's in a different key, everything like that. But Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne, I think, still got a copyright credit on it, a writer's credit on that song, and didn't go to court or anything like that. And that's all down to your own perception of the melody. And they're not quite the same, but they sound quite similar. But they're not the same. So it was always a grey area anyway. With AI now, it's even greyer with what could be a copyright breach. It could be simply down to like a particular sounding that they're farming, and they're taking information from all these songs. It could just be a drum beat that is the same and sounds the same as another song. And is there a copyright breach there? I mean, is the feel of a song a copyright breach? Because I know there was that case with, was it? I can't remember. There was a copyright breach with a song a few years ago that went to court, and I can't remember which one it was. If it was Uptown Funk or something, I think. But there was where the feel of the song was discussed.
Right. It was an 80s Zap, I think the name of the band was, Power to the whatever it is. And if you listen to the side by side, it's similar. I mean, Blurred Lines, Marvin Gaye.
That was the one.
There was that one as well. You're quite right. It's that grey. The areas become more grayer in terms of that one. I can imagine from, if you're delivering these as a vocational specialist in terms of your school and talking about AI, these would be amazing case studies, but also ones where you go, well, that's the world you're going to get into. That's the world that you're choosing to go into. Once upon a time, it was easier in terms of safeguarding. And I've just noticed a comment here from someone on YouTube mentions, have I seen the new AI products guidelines from the government? So maybe most recently, maybe the government have taken measures in terms of guidelines for that one. So that'd be really interesting. But from a teacher's perspective, it is, I echo you, it's both exciting, but not exciting, but it's kind of, you look at it with a sense of wonder, but also a sense of fear that, the creatives who basically specialize in producing product and producing whatever it is will now suddenly find themselves, their livelihoods come under question, under pressure because of AI, and it's.
I think it's about teaching students how to protect themselves and how to make sure their copyright is absolutely locked in, and making sure that they have absolute proof of when everything was created. Because I think without that, it's going to be very difficult to prove in the future. And we students now, musicians now, have to safeguard against that and have ticked every box somehow. And there are various ways that you can do that. Even as simple as posting a recording of it to yourself. So the Royal Mail have stamped date. And it sounds like such a ridiculous way of doing it, but it's date stamped, then, isn't it?
Did they still do that? Because
it can still be done. It is. I wouldn't say it's the most foolproof, but there are various sort of different ways. Even if it's just uploading it to a streaming platform, so you've got the data, everything like that, and it's been registered with the Performing Rights Society or anything like that. At least there is a copy, and it's you've got the metadata for it and everything like that when it's been created.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we have to. I recognise I have to do more of with my students to safeguard them sort of in the future, because the Pandora box has now been opened, and we have to protect the students and musicians of the future.
We do, but that I live in a little bit of hope that, I mean, if the government have produced an AI product guidelines, I live in hope that as we grow with all of these new 21st century technological advancements, and certainly as people in the vocational industry, I kind of have a little bit of faith that as we go on, we're going to put these safeguards in. So maybe those at the beginning, there's probably going to be obviously people that are going to have I'll use the word, be victim of a lot of these new technological advancements. But as we learn and we develop and we kind of keep a couple of steps ahead, I'd imagine there'll be safeguards put in place just to protect the livelihood of the people working in the industry. And more to the point of what we're talking about, David, also give faith to parents and to students to say this industry is an industry to work in, and we can still provide a top class quality education based upon this, rather than, oh, we don't know if this subject's going to be around in 10 years time, because whatever it is, which we don't want. Nobody wants that. So yeah, you're right. I mean, we probably could have done a whole discussion on it, couldn't we? A whole hour of it, and still not be none the wiser of everything. So, I wanted to finally bring in a couple of points, mainly transition from kind of your vocational offerings in terms of what you do in school into the next stage. You mentioned university, but there's also pathways into industry, and also integrating what you do and other industries. Sorry, I'll rephrase that again. How do you integrate all of your offerings within the curriculum provision? I know it's a bit of a wide topics, but I just wondered if I could kind of put the two together to kind of hear your thoughts on them. So we start with the transition into higher education. So historically, which programs have your students gone on to study after leaving your school?
So our sixth form started in 2000, I'm sure it's 2013, 2014. And from there, they've vocational wise, from taking creative arts and sport, students have gone on to very much those creative sides. So we've got students studying music and music business. We've got video game, creating video games. And we've got people going to sports science and everything like that. And from there, lots of students have sort of created their own careers out of it. We've got a former student who's now a scout at Tottenham Hotspur, from going from, I think it was a sports science degree, and then moving on from there. And the interesting thing about that one is that he also, when he was here, he was totally obsessed with Championship Manager, a sort of Championship Manager type computer game. And, just that alone really helped him with his course, and then helped him move on, just because he was crunching data all the time. And it was that just popped in his head. It was just a really interesting thing where, again, a vocational style thing has helped him. But students, they go into music business and music production, performing. What we try and do, our careers provision at the school is outstanding and like award winning, and they will get bespoke career advice from our careers team, sort of in Key Stage 4 and in Key Stage 5, to help them with those next steps, sort of recognising not everyone's going to go to university. So it's really, really good. And I've always been of a mindset particularly with music, and talking to sixth formers who want to go into music. I always think it's so important that they go to not just a good university that's going to help them with the right course, but also a university that's in a place that has a thriving music scene, because it's not always just about the degree, it's about the opportunities they get outside of the degree. So they can take that portfolio that they created on social media, that they've done with us through sort of Key Stage 4 or 5, and then they can start sort of, which I know Bristol as an example, where they can go and study music and in sort of various different sort of institutes, and they can there is a thriving music scene in Bristol which they can get involved in, and that's the really important part, I think, of a creative degree. It's about being in a city that has a thriving creative sort of outlook. So I sort of normally direct them to places like Bristol, Brighton, Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Newcastle, Birmingham, where there is an actual scene that they can be heavily involved in, and where they can make their links with working musicians and venues and record labels, small independent record labels and places like that. So that's the way that that's the sort of the careers advice. It's not just about the course, but it's about the environment that they're in, because there's no point in studying music in a tiny little town where there's no music scene, because it's like you'll get all the skills, but you can't really utilize them, and you're not making any industry links in any way, shape or form. And I think that's so important.
It is, and I think it also shines a light on when it comes to kind of the creative subjects like music, like drama, like dance, anything where you need to be in an environment where you are with like-minded people. It's so important, but it also highlights that it's a very narrow band, isn't it? So, for example, going to your student who's gone to work as a scout for Tottenham Hotspur, I'd imagine at university they could have gone to any other town or city because there would have been a football club associated with them. There might have been, say, from your expertise, you might have said, well, actually, this football club have got a really good scouting network, or they've got a really good scouting department. So if you were to get a university placement, it'd be worthwhile pinging your CV and pinging your message in there, because that's a great club to go into. But there, that could be the same for any amount of clubs, not just Premier League clubs, can't it? But in terms of the performing arts, the creative arts, it really does. You really are narrowing your options to the cities, and then even then cities, you're also narrowing them even more. So you're looking at the best place examples for one's product, if you will, or what one wants to be as a creative. You're really looking at specific places, so you're narrowing them down, and that presents itself a challenge, I'd imagine, of what you suggest, because quite rightly, you wouldn't want to go, you could go study up in the Orkneys, you can go into the mainland, and that'd be amazing. You have a brilliant education, but with all due respect to people from Orkney, there isn't a music scene there. There's not something in there, so it presents itself a lot of challenges. And I imagine a lot of people listening here who work in further education sixth form centres will have a similar situation of what they recommend and what's good for them, really. My last question to you, actually, it's more, I guess, because we're just about wrapping up here, but I just wanted to ask you, I guess, a summary about your role, and I guess if you could leave one kind of soundbite to our listeners about the importance of vocational education from your perspective and what it offers in terms of the current education landscape. What are your initial thoughts on that?
I think for anyone who's sort of struggling to get creative arts seen or be at the forefront of the school, it is all about creating opportunities for students when they're studying vocational subjects, and indeed any subject. I think it's about creating opportunities for them to be able to express themselves and be able to perform. The more students perform, the more confidence they get and the better they get. And just creating it so that it's an everyday experience within the school. They see pieces of art displayed around the school. They see a piece of art on PowerPoint at the start of an assembly. They see live music at the start of an assembly or at lunchtime. And it's just a daily occurrence, so that it's totally embedded into the school, so that students can see that it is just normal for them to be, I'm a musician. I'm an actor, I'm a dancer. And so it's just every day they're just surrounded by the creative arts, and that just it builds so much cultural capital for those students. And with vocational subjects, they can really push on into the future and create careers, whether that's a part-time career or a full-time career in the arts. They will always develop and have that love of the arts and love of being active or being an artist or whatever. I think that's the key thing that our job as educators is to give them the opportunity so that they know it's a totally viable option for them, and it's not for somebody else. Oh no, I don't do that. But giving them all those opportunities, I think it's just so important for students, particularly in this sort of day and age. I think they need to know that it is for everybody.
Yeah, you're quite right. And I'll also add a caveat to that. Doing that, but also being provided the platform.
Yes,
it
yeah.
sounds like,
I think,
David, you have got an incredible platform to make all of this happen, and I think your vision can only be possible for vocational education and your knowledge of industry. It can only be made possible because you've been given that platform to go.
Yeah,
we
absolutely
allow you to happen rather than.
And it's right from the top down, from the governors through SLT, our senior leadership team. They are all so supportive of vocational subjects and seeing that they are a rigorous and important type of qualification, and just the benefits of the creative arts and sport for our students, because that's what makes us human. The arts are what make us who we are. That's what differs us from every other species. We have that love we're creative people.
I think I'm going to end it there. That's a wonderful sentence to end on. David, thank you so much for your time. It's been an amazing conversation. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you for everyone who left comments as well. It's been amazing. Yeah, wonderful stuff. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time, hopefully with Jen. We'll just have to wait and see if she can make this one, but she does send her regards to everyone. But nonetheless, we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time for our next Teachers Talk Radio show, 1 p.m. on Sundays. In the meantime, David, thank you once again. I wish you a wonderful rest of your weekend, and the same goes to everyone. Have a lovely rest of the weekend, and I will speak to you soon. Take care, everyone.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.